Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of TokYo-Yo. My name is T. So I'm going to be doing something a little bit different today. I'm actually going to be doing like a little discussion thing. I've got a couple things on my mind. I don't want anybody to think of it as like a rant. I don't want to be negative or anything. I'd more like everyone to think of it as like a discussion. I want you to comment, let me know what you guys think. In this first episode of this new series, let's talk about making the yo-yo community better or bigger or whatever. So a thing that often comes up with a lot of yo-yo, in a lot of yo-yo communities, and a lot of forums, a lot of discussions is how do we make the yo-yo community bigger? How do we improve the quality of it? And I don't know that I really have a solution to it, but I definitely have some thoughts about it. So first of all, making the yo-yo community bigger is going to take a lot of money, obviously. You've seen sponsorships recently popping up. There was famously the Mountain Dew sponsorship at the World Yo-Yo Contest in Iceland. I don't know how well that turned out after the contest, but I know at least at the time a lot of people were talking about like having a really big company there. I know they had like some sort of little contest there as well that was sponsored by Mountain Dew. But as far as the aftermath of it, I haven't really heard a lot of people talking about it, so I'm not sure that it had the desired effect or not. In any case, I don't know that big sponsorships are the way to go anyway. It's a niche hobby, and it's going to be kind of difficult to get people into the mindset of having a big company kind of in their competitions and in their business, basically. I don't know that a big company is the way to go, basically. People are really protective of their hobbies, and when you start having big companies coming in and having these big events, I think people really quickly kind of turn on that kind of attention. They kind of turn on those big companies saying like, oh, it's not personal enough, it's not independent enough. And I think a lot of the yo-yo community really likes the independent and the more low-key companies right now. It's not a bad thing. So how else can we make the community bigger? You know, it's all about getting the word out. Duncan used to have these kind of little troops that went around and taught people. I know Recess is doing that now. Tyler Severance, once in a while goes around on these big tours, takes the first base to schools and teaches kids a bunch of stuff. That's really, really cool. I think that's definitely like a holistic and a more practical way to do things, especially when you have somebody like Tyler Severance who knows his stuff going around doing it. But it's not always enough. That name doesn't, like big pro names don't have the sway that they do outside of the community like they do to us. Names like Gentry Stein or Tyler Severance or CLYW, those names don't have any power outside of the community, so it's kind of hard for them to do it alone. But I think it definitely is a start, and it's a way to get kids involved, which, as you guys probably know, is like a huge part of the growing yo-yo community right now. I've interviewed tons of people on my series TokYo-Yo Talk, and a lot of them are on the younger side, which is interesting to me. You definitely have a big difference in the age bracket, and I think you have a big difference in style too between the younger people and the older generation of players. I think making the community bigger is going to rest on those kids' shoulders a lot because they are pioneering the new skills, they're pioneering all the new stuff that is going to be modern yo-yoing in a few years. So supporting kids, supporting younger people who want to yo-yo, supporting them, whether that's financially or getting their names out there, getting sponsorships, I don't know what it is, but getting younger people in a position where that they can afford to yo-yo enough that it makes sense for them to do it in the long term, if that makes sense. Okay, now I had another thought that just kind of occurred to me the other day while I was going through Reddit about making the community bigger and better, and it kind of dawned on me, and maybe you guys will disagree with me on this, but basically, okay, so here's the scenario. You're walking down the street. Let's say I'm throwing my metal skyva or my carp fin or whatever. Kid sees me on the street, says, hey, is that a yo-yo? I say, yeah. He says, oh, can I play with it? And I say, well, this one's expensive, or, oh, this one's unresponsive, sorry, it's hard to use, or it's an expert yo-yo or whatever your chosen explanation is. And kid says, well, I wanted to play with the yo-yo. So that happens a lot, and I'm sure that happens to a lot of yo-yoers. Not all of us carry around responsives all the time. Some of us do that and, let people play with the responsive yo-yos or whatever, but that's not really an option for a lot of us, especially those of us with kids. You're already packing enough stuff. You don't have room in your bag for responsive yo-yos that you might give to somebody on the street. So I think sometimes we can have that effect of making yo-yo seem like there's more mystique to it, or there's more complexity to it than there actually is. And another thing is cost. Sometimes I teach people how to yo-yo, varying ages, and something that often comes up is the price. So if I'm throwing anything usually over like $30, if it's not a Shark Honor or some magic yo-yo, People are like, well, how much does it cost? I'm like, well, 40 bucks, 50 bucks, 60 bucks sometimes. And people are like, wow, that's really expensive. Like, why would you pay that much for a yo-yo? And then you get into the whole thing of like, well, this thing has a different metal, or the bearing is really nice, or the company it comes from is really prestigious or premium or something. And then their eyes have already glazed over. I think that sometimes this isn't really just our fault. I think it's sort of the curse of yo-yoing. Once you get to a certain point in your skill where it becomes very difficult to explain yo-yoing, and it becomes very difficult to show anything without just making the other person bored with what you're talking about. I think that sometimes, just by virtue of what we do and the cost of the things that we're playing with and the level that we're playing at, can sometimes seem elitist to some non-players. And again, like, I'm not saying that's a yo-yoer's fault. I'm just saying that that's something that comes from being a more advanced player and somebody who uses a yo-yo that's not just like a plastic throwaway. So I teach yo-yo. I teach using the first base. But the people I teach have also seen me throwing my other metal yo-yos before. So they want to know, well, why can't I use the metal yo-yos? Well, because those aren't at your level yet. You should play with this one first, you'll get the basics, and then later we'll graduate up to the other one. But no, but I saw this trick on YouTube. Okay, so here we are. So we've fallen into this hole of basically people want to get ahead and they want to jump to the hardest stuff right away. And they think that the way to do that is by getting better gear. But the better gear is more expensive, it's very tricky to find. And generally, a lot of the people I've talked to are pretty shocked that yo-yos cost anything over $20 or $30 these days. When I tell them there are yo-yos that are over $100, $200, $300, they're not able to understand. It's incomprehensible that a toy should cost that much. And so that's a frustrating thing, I think, to sum up, is like, you have, the cost is prohibitive to a lot of people. The level that they see you doing things at is difficult for them to understand. And then when you tell them like, well, I don't want you to play with this one because you might break it, it all kind of melts together and makes us seem a little bit elitist, I think. Now, at the same time, I think we are a really great community, especially like if you go on the R Throwers Reddit, a lot of people on there are really nice and really helpful. And in other places where people would get really crapped on for asking beginner questions, the R Throwers community is always really, really kind and welcoming and friendly in that way. And so that's really, a shining point, I think, in the internet, where usually people are garbage monsters on internet forums. The R Throwers is a beacon of hope in that apocalyptic wasteland. But when you're just walking down the street, it can sometimes be difficult for a passerby to not be a little discouraged when they see you throwing something that, especially a kid, something that costs them more than a video game, doesn't come back when they tug on it, that kind of thing. It can seem really disheartening and discouraging. So is there more that we can do as throwers? That's the thing, is like, I don't know. Like, we can just keep putting ourselves out there and keep, trying to popularize the sport, keep going to competitions, keep posting our content everywhere, keep showing our friends, keep trying to teach as many people as possible. But at a certain point, it's going to take something else, and I'm not sure what that is. I want you guys to comment. Let me know down in the comments what you think, because I think it's kind of stumped me. And it also made me consider, like, do we actually need to make the community bigger? I feel like we're in a pretty good place right now. And I wonder, what would the effect of having more money and more eyes and more sponsorships and more big companies on the yo-yo community be? Maybe prices would go down, competition would go up, you'd probably have a lot more yo-yos on sale. They'd probably be available in more places. So there are some good points as well. So of course there are advantages to it, but I'm just throwing this out there. Anyway, guys, I don't know, that was probably rambling. I don't know if any of that made sense, but I'm gonna put this one out as a test, and if you guys liked it, if you want me to talk more on this subject, or if you want me to talk about other things in the yo-yo community, I've got some ideas for doing some other episodes, let me know. And we'll see if I can come up with some interesting discussion topics that don't just seem like me ranting and rambling all the time. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Take care. Have a nice day inside Yoyo Nara.